gonna be my little assistant? Hello everyone and happy Friday. As you guys can tell from the title, I am going to be ranking all of the books that I have read in 2024. The video is obviously a little late. I'm basically just going to be sharing the star rating, a few of my thoughts about each book, or very little thoughts about each book. You farted, sir. So I counted the books that I finished or either DNF'd after the 50% mark. Just as a bit of an overview for all of these books, I ended up reading 24 books in 2024. 2 were 5-star reads, 7 were 4-star reads, 4 were 2-star reads, 3 1-star reads, and then I DNF'd 4 of these books after the 50% mark. Starting off the list with one I greatly despise, Hold Back the Stars by Katie Kahn. Yeah, I ended up giving this a 1-star rating. This book was incredibly annoying in the end. This is a science fiction love story. These two characters are stuck in space with only, I want to say 80 minutes to live, 80 minutes of oxygen left to live. Kind of figure out what to do, and it also goes back in time for when they met. And it sounds really cute and unique to me. This book was just incredibly pointless to me because it was one of those ones where nothing really mattered in the end. There were no great consequences in the end. Both of the main characters were incredibly annoying. There was no chemistry between them at all. It was major insta-love. And also, it's supposed to be a science fiction book, but I could hardly tell that it was because nothing seemed to stand out as science fiction-y other than the moments where they were actually in space. Next was a book that I highly anticipated and I ended up DNFing it. K-Pop Revolution by Stephen Lee. This is the second book in, I believe, a duology. Really loved the first book, K-Pop Revolution. Really recommend that book if you like K-pop. But this book was just, it ruined everything good that happened in the first book. Everything that made the first book amazing was just torn to shreds in this book, and that's really all I have to say. The 22nd book was The Bookwoman of Troublesome Creek by Kim Michelle Richardson. This book sounded really promising. It just seemed like a book that most people really loved, and I did not like this book whatsoever. Nothing happened in this book. I was out of my mind, bored. I think the blue people, I believe is what they're called, sound really interesting and everything like that. The concept is really interesting. In the end, all I put for a note was so bored, nothing happened, DNF. Can you stop your farting? Yeah. Number 21 was another DNF, and this book was Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood. The first little bit of this book was actually pretty interesting. Based off the concept, I thought it was going to be like Queen's Gambit, but with a little bit of romance in it. I really liked the Queen's Gambit, and I was hoping something similar to that. I don't like chess at all, but the Queen's Gambit, you just felt the stakes of the chess matches. And then here, I did not. I was pretty bored during the chess portions of this book, and I also didn't like the romance that was happening. It felt really forced. I didn't like the pairing. Number 20 is Bright by Jessica Jung. This is another book that focuses on K-pop. Well, I do think this book did really well with the fashion element, and I thought that was a really nice touch. This book is definitely more like of a Jessica Jung tells all, or she tells her side of the story. For anyone who's unaware, Jessica Jung was or is a K-pop artist, and she was a member of the girl group Girls' Generation. There was a whole fallout between her and the group members and her company, SM Entertainment, and everyone's kind of wondered what exactly happened, and this is kind of pretty much her telling her side of the story and trying to portray it as fiction. It's really clear when you know everything that you do of the situation that it's not fiction. Definitely knew that both of these books were going to be talking about her situation and what kind of happened, but the first one didn't, I wouldn't say was totally obvious. I also just didn't like any of the characters. I found all of them to be extremely annoying. Number 19 is Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing by Matthew Perry. I obviously did read this after his passing. I am a huge Friends lover. My mom and I can quote so many scenes, so I was really wanting to kind of read his book finally. I DNF'd this book at 80% just because like I felt like I got the gist of it, and this book is rather depressing, which makes sense considering what it talks about. After about 80%, I just felt like I knew enough and I don't really have much of a desire to continue on reading. Number 18, I feel like I'm gonna get some people looking at me pretty questionably, is Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. This book follows a woman who I believe is in desperate need of a job. She is given a job where she needs to take care of a man who is, can't think of the proper word, who is pretty much in a wheelchair and can't really take care of himself. She's basically just to be there during the day and try to give him some company. But secretly, she does not know this, but they're also hoping that she will be able to keep him from taking his own life, because he gave his parents 6 months time to convince him to live, and if he doesn't feel like he should live by the end of those 6 months, then he will take his life, or he will, I don't know what the proper wording is, but there are these places in the UK that I believe you can go and where your life can be taken medically. And so that was his deal with his family. If they didn't convince him or give him a reason to want to live after 6 months, then he was going to do it. Yeah, that's the basis of this book. It's supposed to be a romance. I don't consider it a romance. I really wanted to love this, but it just felt pointless because I think in the end, you just know that he's going to die. I didn't want to read it, really. The only reason, I have it in my notes right here, the only reason that I continued listening to this book is because it was on a Saturday, and on Saturdays, I just clean and I listen to an audiobook. And this was the audiobook that I was listening to at that time. It brought up an interesting topic. I do think, though, how it was set up, it wasn't set up greatly, because they got this random woman to take care of him and grow to care for him. It just seemed like a very horrible manipulation kind of thing towards her, and I didn't like how that was done. Switching up positions. I'm very sorry. I did not anticipate this, but I forgot that my ring light does not plug into a regular outlet. 17 is Numb to This by Kendra Neely. I honestly don't have anything to say about this book, but this talks about a school shooting. I don't personally have anything negative to say about this. I don't generally rate graphic novels too high because they are so short. I do feel slightly disconnected sometimes, and that was kind of my feeling with this. But again, it's nothing to do with story that was being told. I love the art style, and I think it was told really well from this woman's perspective. Number 16 is Oddball by Sandra Anderson. This is, I think, the 5th installment of her little series. She does very cute, funny, relatable little graphic stories. This one I really liked. It wasn't my favorite out of hers. I think just because it just felt really short. But I still really enjoyed it. It's fun and cute. Number 15 is another graphic novel. Again, I don't generally give graphic novels a very big rating. This one is no different, even though it's one of my favorite books that is turned into a graphic novel. But it is the first Warriors graphic novel. It combines the first 2 books in the first arc, which is Into the Wild and Fire and Ice. This is gorgeous. Just absolutely gorgeous art. It's full color. It is just breathtaking. The amount of times where I just stared at each of the pages because I was just, series that I love so much was in a way coming to life, and it keeps being said that they're gonna make an animation series about this or a movie, and I think finally it did get repicked up again, but who knows if that will continue to be a thing. But anyways, this brings to life Warriors, which is about a bunch of wild cats in the forest, and basically talks about their life in the forest and the troubles that they have with the other clans in the forest. It's a lot to get into. I have a whole series about me catching up with the book series because it is massive. Incredibly glad to have it to my collection. The only thing that I dislike about it, they really should have extended the Fire and Ice portion. They really skimmed over the majority of Fire and Ice, the book, which I don't quite understand because I feel like that is filled with a huge chunk of information that you need to know to be able to understand the gravity of what happens in future books in this arc. And I don't understand that. Fire and Ice is also one of my favorite books out of the first arc. So again, do not understand why that was done. I think it really made this graphic novel not as great as it could be, which is why it is a 3 out of 5 star. Just make it real thick. You know those Harry Potter ones that are just massive? Make one like that. We will love it. I know it'll take longer, but we'll love it. Coming in at number 14 is Dear Medusa by... I always try to remember the authors so I can always say it in one go, but I never can. By Olivia A. Cole. This was told in verse, and this is kind of similar with how I feel about graphic novels. Because it is told in verse, I have a really hard time being absorbed in it. However, I would say this is the first book written in verse that I have been as absorbed in it as I was for this one. I thought this was a really amazing story. It tells a very important story. It grabs your attention from the moment you begin reading. I really enjoyed our main character. I really do recommend it, and I think people who love books written in verse will really enjoy this book. Coming in at number 13 is I Had to Survive by Roberto Canessa. If you have watched any of my videos from 2024, you'll probably remember me at some point talking about Society of the Snow, whether that's the film or the book. Became very interested in this horrible tragedy. This book talks about the tragedy in 1972 where a plane crashed in the Andes and it held a rugby team and their families and friends. It's more focus on Roberto and his experience with the crash and their survival. It also does bring up his role as a doctor, I can't remember what you call it, but he's a doctor for babies. But it talks about how pretty much him surviving, the reason why he survived was to help all of these people, their babies, and them as mothers. I did enjoy this. I find all of their stories fascinating, all of these survivors' stories fascinating. I would love to read all of their books talking about their survival. I think 2 or 3 though are only written in Spanish. No habla español. I was really interested in Roberto. I think he was the one that fascinated me the most. Maybe it was just because the actor who portrays him, Matthias Recall, did such an amazing job. So I was really looking forward to reading more from his perspective and everything like that. It was also really interesting because he included stories from his patients. I also think that was a reason why I didn't really love this book. I did end up giving it a 3 out of 5 stars. I think because I was just really wanting just to hear from him, that kind of made the rating lower. But I again understand why he did that, because he feels his reason for surviving was to help all these people, which is very admirable. The next book coming in at number 12 is The Apprentice's Quest by Aaron Hunter. This is the first book in the Vision of Shadows arc by Aaron Hunter. I enjoyed this book to an extent. I like our new main character, Alderpaul. I find him to be very interesting, but compared to other first books of the other arcs, I definitely did feel like this was the worst. Personally, it didn't seem as exciting, and it felt like it really dragged on, and it felt kind of like, what is the point in this book? Because we are pretty much right back where we started. Give you the feeling of, is that it? We went through all that for just this little itty bitty thing. Maybe that's to set us up for what's going to come next in this arc. I have not yet gotten there. I would say we are really into a big new generation for the warrior cats, and so I definitely think they didn't establish this new generation very well. The only cats that really have a personality is Alderpaw and Needlepaw. Everyone else is just kind of meh. I mean, I guess Sandstorm as well. Coming in at number 11 is The True Love Experiment by Christina Lauren. I read this earlier in the year, so I honestly don't have too many thoughts about this book because my memory of it is pretty much already erased. That's how my brain works with books. This was a very cute, fun, and at times funny book, and I really flew right through it. The setup of this book is a woman who is put on a game show, I believe, with multiple different guys who fit certain tropes. Is that the word for it? You know, they have like the bad guy or the cool guy, the nerdy guy, jock, you know, stuff like that. Main character is supposed to find love through this experiment, and then it also has like a science element to it. I did really enjoy this book. There was nothing I particularly loved though, or nothing I particularly disliked at the same time. This was just a really good, cute, fun, mindless read. Coming in at number 10 is Alive by Piers Paul Reed. This is another book that is talking about the plane crash that happened. This one, I think, is the first one that was written after the accident. I think this book is good. I do think it reads kind of like a Wikipedia page though. There's so much information, which is really interesting to learn about, obviously, because I think most people, when they first learn of the story, they want to know all the details and stuff like that, and they want to know more details on how the guys lived, like how was their day-to-day lives in the fuselage. And this book pretty much answers the questions of what happened in those days of them surviving in the Andes, but because it is chock full of information, it does kind of lack depth and character, and it kind of almost, I wouldn't say dehumanizes any of them, but I definitely think it put the information as the forefront of the book rather than the story of their amazing survival, their brotherhood, the heart, I guess, as they say all the time, of their story of how they survived. But the next one coming in at number 9 is Miracle in the Andes by Nando Parado. And this is another one that talks about the plane crash. I'm sorry. He was one of the ones, along with Roberto, who climbed. I mean, this is about a true story, so I'm not worried about spoilers. But he was one of the ones, along with Roberto, to climb out of the Andes and find rescue for the rest of the survivors at the fuselage. This was beautifully written and also at times humorous because he talked about his life prior to the tragedy. Very funny. He was a very awkward person when he was younger. Very wholesome to learn about his life. It was also really interesting to kind of understand his mindset during that situation. It was just really moving to find out that he felt like love was the reason that they managed to escape and survive. So this book is just really, really moving, and I would really highly recommend it. Coming in at number 8 is Out of the Silence by Eduardo Strach. He's another survivor of the plane crash in the Andes. I'm sorry. I recommend all these books. I really do. This one was my favorite out of all of their personal stories. And the sole reason is that Eduardo is such a great storyteller. I've also seen a few videos of him talking about their survival, and just the way that he talks and just speaks is just so beautiful and very eloquent. All I have for my notes is beautifully written. I love to hear a talk from him. Number 7 is The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. I read this book because my mom would not stop talking about it, and she wanted to talk to someone about it who actually read it. This book follows a family who moves to Alaska and basically just the life of people who live in Alaska and how they did it back then. I didn't immediately get into this book as much as my mom did. When she started listening to the audiobook, she said it got her attention right away. But once it did get my attention was got for the majority of the day. I really loved our main character, and I really liked pretty much all the characters, obviously not the obvious no character. I did really enjoy this book. I didn't like how it ended, but I'm just really picky with how books end personally, especially if they do include romance. And this book does have romance in it, and I think the romance is pretty stinking cute, I'm not gonna lie. Near the end, I did feel slightly disconnected from our two main characters. I think it was because of the time jump that I felt disconnected. I don't like time jumps, okay? I just don't like it. Telling you, I'm just gonna end up like right here by the end of this video. Coming in at number 6 is Never a Hero, Vanessa Lynn. Her name is Vanessa Lynn. This is the second book of another book that is on this list, and because of that, I really can't get into what this book is about. But I highly recommend this book. It is the second book in a trilogy. Loved the atmosphere of this book. It's very atmospheric, and I really enjoyed most of the characters. I enjoyed all the characters besides one, who is one of our love interest, because this is a trilogy that talks about love triangles. Yay. Nevertheless, I did really enjoy this story, and I think it is a really great setup for the final book in the series, which is going to come out sometime this year. Ending of this book had me shocked. She did a wonderful job at creating a cliffhanger that I was not expecting, and I need the third book, please. I really recommend this series. The 5th book is Gorgeous Gruesome Faces by Linda Chang. I'm telling you, I can't remember the author and the title. I'm sorry. This book was a pleasant surprise for me. I was not expecting to like it that much because in the past year, I have read more K-pop related books and been utterly, completely disappointed. It combines K-pop, elements of K-pop with horror, and it was really well done. And there is also going to be another book in this series. I don't know if it's going to be a duology, trilogy. This book talks about our main character who was in a, what's it called? A trio. She was in a trio girl group, and one of her members shockingly took her own life, and she thinks that the other member possibly had something to do with it, And so she finds out that the other member, Candace, I believe is her name, is going to be involved in a little K-pop boot camp type of situation. And so she joins this little boot camp to find out what exactly happened to their former member. This book also does include Japanese folklore, which I thought was a really interesting addition. This book isn't horribly scary, so if you're not wanting something extremely scary, then I would recommend this. However, it does contain some gore, so just be aware of that. If you can't handle gore, maybe don't pick up this one. I don't find gore to be scary though. Coming at number 4 is The Shadows by Alex North. This book was very creepy and intriguing, and I was not expecting one of the twists that did happen in the book. This book follows, I can't remember his name, but it follows an older gentleman who is going back to his home that he lived in when he was a younger child, like when he was around 12 years old, because his mother is in her deathbed. He wants to be there to take care of her and kind of fix up the situation at the home. But when going there, it brings up a lot of things that happened in his past. More specifically, it brings up the death of one of his friends that was caused by 2 of his other friends that he hung out with. And he starts seeing things and finding things in his home, and he kind of goes back and tries to figure out exactly what is going on in his present world. Why is he seeing a strange figure in his yard? Why is he being stalked? Why is he finding these creepy dolls in his house? Yeah. And it also goes back to when he was younger and what that friend group was like and what they were into, which is really, really creepy. Yeah, this book just talks about creepy children. Fun. I did really enjoy this book. I think the only thing that kept me from giving this a 5 out of 5 stars is because I did find the reveal to be very anticlimactic. Coming in at number 3 was a very surprising read, and I read it earlier in the year, and I really need to get back into the series. It is The Wolf Den by Elodie Harper. So this book is set in, I believe, AD 94, I could be wrong, and it follows our main character Amara, who is enslaved in one of the Pompeii, why do I always want to say Pompeii brothels during that time, which I wasn't even, I mean, I knew that happened, but I never read a book talking about it. This book was definitely very eye-opening, and I felt like it was really well done. I loved our characters in this book so much. I loved our main character. I think for some people this book could feel a little slow. The amount of characters may also confuse you because there is a lot of characters in this book. But yeah, I ended up giving this a 4 out of 5 stars though, because I did get confused with the characters multiple times, and I kind of did feel like that was a little bit of a struggle. Coming in at number 2 is Only a Monster by Vanessa Lynn. This is the first book in that duology that I talked about that talks about time travel. You know, I don't want to explain this book because I really think you should go in knowing absolutely nothing so your socks are as knocked off as mine were. This book I just randomly found on Libby because I was bored and I was just trying to find something that I'd never heard of and that I wanted to take a chance on, and this is one of my favorite books that I've read recently, and it was one of my favorites in 2024. This does talk about time travel, I will say that. It is a very unique magic system and the world is incredibly fleshed out. It's incredibly unique. The book does not focus on romance, it's just kind of the subplot, which I enjoy. Yes, there is nothing that I dislike about this book whatsoever. This book had me on the edge of my seat. Coming in at number 1. Can you guess what it is based on multiple other books that have been mentioned in this video? It is Society of the Snow by Pablo Versi. I hope I'm saying his last name right. I'm so sorry if I'm not. This book tells the story of the plane crash that happened in the Andes. The other notes I have for this is a story that tells this tragic event beautifully with the survivors' stories and feelings regarding what happened and how they felt and how they are feeling now afterwards and how their life is affected. Shows the strength in humans, showed their brotherhood, had so much soul and love within the story. Highly recommend. This book not only tells the stories of the 14 survivors, but I think it also tells the stories of the other people on the plane who unfortunately did not make it. I do hope you guys maybe found some new books to possibly look into and read yourself. If not, that's obviously fine. I enjoyed rambling. Also, if you guys have any book favorites that you read in 2024, definitely feel free to talk about them in the comments below. I would really like more book recommendations. I hope you guys have a lovely Friday, and I will see you next Friday. Bye-bye.